Jai Bhagwan, everybody, and I'm getting ready to record the Ayurvedic Woman podcast today on anxiety and the gift of anxiety. So this video I'm doing simultaneously because I'm going to start a YouTube channel, and so here we go. Jai Bhagwan, everybody, and welcome to the Ayurvedic Woman podcast. I am your host, Dr. Satyavani, and as always, I am so grateful that you're here. It's March 15th, and I was out on my outdoor walk this morning, and kind of a workout, and it was raining, and I was actually really happy to see the rain as I look outside right now, because we are in desperate need of moisture on so many levels. And I was thinking about the elements and nature. As humans, we seem to always be fighting against it. We're always fighting against nature rather than accepting it. And I did a short little Instagram live about this morning. It's probably about 90 seconds, if that. And it's really interesting how we want to climate control our lives based on our own desires and whims, and that's really where the tension lies. That's where the struggle happens. That's where dis-ease rather than ease occurs. And this was really very interesting to me because it was something that I was thinking about in terms of why do we struggle versus accepting. And once we accept, we can move on, and it allows us, when we accept, to actually create rather than have this unnecessary battle that zaps our ojas, our life force, and our immunity. What would that be like? And that thought process led me actually to the topic that I wanted to talk about today, which is anxiety. I personally have struggled with anxiety my entire life. And I think a lot of my family members do, and a lot of people that I know do. And I also know that now in our current culture, based on everything that has occurred over the past 2 years, anxiety is at an all-time high. Now, be anxious, be anxious, be anxious. It's terrible. And I can remember as far back as 6 years old feeling anxious about something. And over the years, remembering how I have just analyzed the shit out of it because I was on this quest to know why. And if I knew why, then I could get rid of the anxiety. It seemed like a logical conclusion. And the reality was that even though I could point to things in my life that brought anxiety, whether it was my Catholic school experience as a child, my eating disorder, the pressure I felt as an athlete, pressure to get good grades, pressure to not embarrass my family, stress over money, my experience of sexual assault, my perfection problem that I have in my head that seems to be the case with a lot of we pittas and people in general. Whatever it was, you name it, it didn't really matter. And it did not change the anxiety from coming. It showed up and still shows up all the time. So I can try to point to things, I can try to overanalyze, I can go into the archives of my youth and try to analyze all of these things, and the reality is that the anxiety still shows up. And that was an exhausting process, and has been an exhausting process for a very long time. And over the years, yes, I have learned to cope with it in very highly and very effective ways. But that did not change the fact that it always arrives. I could do all the yoga, meditation, Ayurveda, Ayurvedic herbs, physical fitness, lifting weights, journaling, yoga nidra, fill in the blank with whatever, and the anxiety still comes. I also realized that the amount of effort I have put into examining, understanding, and trying ultimately to mitigate the anxiety has been the equivalent of a multi-million-dollar investment of resources over the course of, say, 47 years. I'm 47 now, so maybe it hasn't been 47, but we'll say 37 or a little bit more. And that is all in an effort that if I were to equate this in dollars, I would be wealthier than any combination of multimillionaires that you could throw at me. So that's the amount of resources, energetic resources, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial resources I have thrown at this. And so that, my friends, is a lot. So this morning, here we are. I was awakened at 2:30 a.m. with Dr. Anxiety. And she was hot, she was coming in hot, she was coming in strong, and I immediately wanted her to go away. I was tired and was like, really? Really? You're showing up again? But I decided instead to let her in rather than try to get rid of her. So fast forward to my rainy walk this morning, and what came of that was this. What if this anxiety is actually a gift? What if for 40 plus years I have had this all wrong? What if instead of trying to mitigate it like I was taught growing up, instead I saw this as an elemental gift from the Ayurvedic gods and I turned it into a real superpower? What if my superpower actually is the energy that anxiety brings? An energy so great that it wakes me up at 2:30 in the morning with a heat like none other, pushing me toward greatness. We tend to think that when we have experiences like this that are uncomfortable, that's a bad thing. And the first thing that we want to do, our brain tells us this, like, get rid of it, move away. And the reality is that what if we reverse that? What if this is a knock on the door to greatness? Now, that's something I never thought of. You think about all the stuff traveling in my brain over the past 40 plus years, I would have had that thought. Well, guess what? Did not, and here it is now. And culturally, we view anxiety as a bad thing, something we should be ashamed of, something we lock up and lock down. And we do that so we can be, quote, normal people, whatever the hell that is. I'm definitely not in the normal category, and I hope all of you that are listening aren't either. Whatever that means, but what if we experience anxiety actually as a calling? As a push to get out of our comfortable, mundane lives and get out there and create. Get out there and be. Get out there and do. All of it. In Ayurveda, anxiety is associated with the elements of air and ether. When we get those elements down to the doshic level, we see anxiety as an imbalance of Vata dosha, which is a combination of those elements of air and ether. And Vata is the air principle. It's light, it's dry, it's mobile. And on the mental level, it is associated with an overabundance of lightness, of movement, which can result in erratic thinking, worry, obsession, confusion, and difficulty focusing. So basically the recipe for our current culture. And we are surrounded by this every single day in our society. So welcome to the club. I do, however, see anxiety manifest on the doshic level for the various doshas. I don't just see it necessarily as an exclusive Vata dosha imbalance, but I can see it in Pitta, and being a Pitta person, I see that anxiety manifests as anger, And in kapha, it can manifest sort of as stuckness or even depression, a kind of a holding back, like, oh, this is so debilitating that I can't move forward. And so, depending on what your predominant constitution, your predominant prakriti is, and the associated vikriti, or the state of disease and imbalance, anxiety can show up in different ways. But my point here is actually not to make this podcast or this YouTube video as one about like the nature of anxiety and this is what Ayurveda says about it, and these are the quote recommendations to get rid of it or to mitigate it, etc. Because I actually think that just kind of feeds the machine. But rather, I think that the point here is for anxiety, for us to look at it from a different perspective. And what if anxiety is that wake-up call to greatness? What if it's the call to action that's this divine voice inside of us that's saying, you can be great. You can have everything it is that you ever wanted. Stop with the doubt. Stop with the second guessing. And what if we use that to our advantage? I'll say for myself that over the years what I've done with anxiety is kind of a combination of trying to push it out of my life and also take it and turn it into fire. And again, as a Pitta, my relationship with fire is a pretty close one. And my desire for transformation is something that's very strong. And Pitta and fire being associated with transformation, always becoming, always transforming, always refining. And so it's my nature to do that. When anxiety comes, I gotta be honest, I get a little pissed. Like this morning, 2:30, I'm like, geez, like really? Like today, now? Like, no, really, 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 no. And so then I get pissed about it. And I want to say, just go away. But then unconsciously, and this is so subtle, unconsciously, I take that anxiety and I heat it up. And when I heat it up, I then turn it into something that is transformational. And if I really think about it, when I heat it up and I turn it into something transformational, I've done my best work. And I'll share how that manifested itself when I was a doctoral student, literally like 300 years ago. And I did 6 months of field work and research and did all of these interviews and et cetera, for my dissertation. And I just had this block of sitting down and writing my dissertation, and literally waited until the last minute to do it. And I had 2 weeks left. I mean, I had submitted my proposal, and it had been approved by the committee and all of these kinds of things. But when it came down to actually like sitting and grinding it out and writing it, I did my best work from the heat that I was able to transform the anxiety into. And I wrote that bad boy in like 2 weeks. Just sat down in front of my computer and boom, just banged it out. And like, was it material for the Barnes & Noble bestseller after being published? Of course not, no. But it was really good work. And I did that because I had this anxious feeling that like, you've got a deadline, you've got pressure, etc. And I know some people will say that they work well under pressure, etc. And pressure really is anxiety in a different costume. And so I think the difference is today, rather than being pissed that anxiety has shown up again, I'm actually literally like today saw this while walking outside in the rain, the irony of it all. Literally, after 40 years, rather than seeing anxiety as something that I need to push away and avoid. It is a gift. I recognized that. And that was like, where have you been, Satyavani? All of these years, it has shown up on my doorstep, has asked for entry, and I have responded with slamming the door in its face. Like, you can go away. And then as soon as the door got slammed, then I got to work. What I decided today is that when she shows up again, because she probably will tomorrow, 2:30 in the morning, likely. But when she shows up again, telling me it's time for the next evolution of myself, I'm going to invite her in. And I'm going to have her help me transform rather than cutting her out of the equation by slamming the door in her face. And how will I do that? I'm going to heat her up. Anxiety as a vata condition made up of the elements of air and ether is cold and it's dry. And like the 10 pairs of balancing elements, I just need to heat her up and moisturize her so she can lubricate me into becoming the woman I'm meant to be. Her knocking on the door for 40 years has been a call to action. I really am stupid. For 40 years, she's been coming to the door, and it has been a call to action, a gift. And now I'm ready to open that gift. What if we all did that? What if we saw anxiety for what she really is? A strong, vibrating, elemental force that is calling us to action because she gets our attention. When she comes in, it's like, woof, that's an embodied experience. She's powerful and she's fierce, and we love to hate her. But let's not hate her. Don't hate. Let's take the force and the energy that she is bringing into our lives, propelling us forward, and take action. Become great. Live in sync with our internal nature, our prakriti, our dharma. Mind blown. Thank you so much, everyone. Jai Bhagwan, and as always, may your soul be victorious.